The Intelligencia is one of the most powerful, biggest teams of supervillains in Marvel Comics. I mean, it is a team comprised of Marvel's biggest, baddest, smartest, most intelligent villains. That's why it's called the Intelligencia, because it's comprised of all the smartest villains. And so with this team being so big and so powerful, you would think they would have a lot of potential in the MCU. But when they did debut in the MCU, in the She-Hulk Disney Plus series, they were instead turned into a joke. They were an online hate group who was led by a guy named Todd, who just ended up being some weirdo pervert misogynist who stole She-Hulk's blood and turned into Hulk Todd, which just blows my mind that that's an actual thing. So that was really disappointing, because when I first heard rumors that the Intelligencia was going to be in She-Hulk, I made a video about that. Like, right after that first trailer came out, there was a rumor about the Intelligencia, and I was super hyped about that, because the Intelligencia is a team from the comics that has a lot of potential and could be really, really cool to see in the MCU. But then we did see them, and they were just absolutely wasted. But I got thinking, though, because we've seen this happen before, where Marvel Studios will do something and then they fix it later. They did it with the Mandarin. They, at least according to rumors, could be doing it with MODOK. And they could totally, easily do it with the Intelligencia as well. Because sure, we had the Intelligencia in She-Hulk, and it was a terrible online Reddit-based version of the group, but you could have a strong comics accurate version of the group even after that, because they could totally make an easy excuse of maybe the Intelligencia was this real secret big bad organization of superpowered, super intelligent villains, and Todd's Intelligencia group was just inspired by it, or they were just trying to be all big and cool like the real Intelligencia. And this is a team that could play such a huge role going forward in the MCU, with some of these big characters coming in, with some of these big projects like Captain America New World Order and Thunderbolts. There's a lot of potential for the Intelligencia. So that is exactly what today's video is about, where we are talking about the Intelligencia in the MCU and who would be a part of this team. Starting off with the most obvious member, Samuel Stearns, aka the leader. He was the initial one that we initially thought was going to be in the She-Hulk Disney Plus series, whether the Intelligencia was there or not. But either way, we know that Tim Blake Nelson is returning as the character, reprising his role as Samuel Stearns, aka Mr. Blue, from 2008's The Incredible Hulk. He's going to be coming back as at least one of the villains of Captain America New World Order next year, and he's going to be fully transformed into the leader. He is one of the mainstays of this group in the comics. He is so integral to the Intelligencia, so if we got an Intelligencia in the MCU, the leader would no doubt be a part of it, and honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he was the leader of the team. Get it? Yeah. But another one is MODOK, which maybe, again, I mentioned it a little earlier, but we just got MODOK in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, played by Corey Stoll. It was the return of Darren Cross from the first Ant-Man movie. This is a character that has been a big controversial talking point when it comes to this film. Some people hate it. Some people think it was a big disgrace to the character, a big waste of MODOK. Other people like me think like, okay, it was fine. It was all right. I didn't completely mind it, but I would prefer a more comics accurate version. And I did do a video a couple weeks ago about a rumor coming from, I think it was maybe My Time to Shine Hello. It was one of the scoopers saying that MODOK is going to return. And if MODOK does return, I highly doubt it will be the same Darren Cross MODOK. I think that version is dead, even though technically his heart monitor never flatlined. That is one detail you may want to notice. But I feel like if MODOK does come back, it will be a more comics accurate version of the character. So that is where we could get George Tarleton, who, of course, in the comics, George Tarleton is the actual MODOK. He's a scientist who works for AIM. This would be a great opportunity to bring back AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics, another group that was introduced in Iron Man 3 and just kind of went absolutely nowhere. Bring that group back in, have George Tarleton be a scientist that works there, and he could easily just fit in so well. And even if maybe you have some other character that I'll be talking about a little bit later in this video, maybe finds out about this MODOK stuff, somehow gets a hold of MODOK's body and the shell, the suit of MODOK from the quantum realm, repurposes it. George Tarleton takes on the mantle of MODOK and becomes the real comics accurate MODOK. MODOK becoming one of the most intelligent beings and a perfect candidate for the Intelligencia, just as he is in the comics. Now, Artem Zola. Artem Zola is a character that I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about because he was, of course, a villain in human form in Captain America the First Avenger, and then he came back in Captain America the Winter Soldier in his robot form. Of course, in the comics, Artem Zola, his consciousness is transferred into this robot body. We saw a glimpse of that in the Winter Soldier where he supposedly died again, and we technically haven't seen him in the MCU since, besides What If, but that is in a different universe. But still, I mean, Artem Zola, like, literally, his consciousness is in the internet. Just because that one computer with his face on it got blown up in that whole building does not mean he's gone. He is 100% still out there, alive in this universe. And while I don't believe he's ever played a role in the Intelligencia in the comics, I mean, he's a really smart guy. Why would he not be part of the team in the MCU? Especially because if Toby Jones was willing to come back for What If, I would not be surprised if he wanted to come back and reprise the role in live action for whatever type of project the Intelligencia would be involved in. Then we have Egghead, another character who is, supposedly dead, but is he? This is another one that kind of fans often forget about, that we do have an Elias Starr Egghead in the MCU. Because Ant-Man and the Wasp from 2018, when we got the backstory, the origin of Ava Starr, aka Ghost, the villain of the film, she was talking about how her father, Elias Starr, worked with Hank Pym. He got fired, banished, whatever. He did some secret experiments with quantum energy, and basically the whole place blew up. The whole thing blew up, and supposedly both of our parents died, including Elias Starr. Meanwhile, Ava Starr got the quantum superpowers. Now, to be fair, we do see Egghead's dead body lying there on the ground, but I fully believe that, like, you know, if Ava survived, it is totally possible that she survived as well, and somehow she just didn't know about it. Like, it could be a very similar thing to what happened to the leader when, at the end of 2008's The Incredible Hulk, Bruce's blood got on the leader's head, and that started transforming his head into what it looks like in the comics as the leader. It could be a very similar thing where, you know, Ava got the crazy shifting, phasing powers as Ghost from the quantum energy from the explosion of that experiment, and it could just be that Elias Starr, he got, because of those quantum waves, his head got a little bigger and more egg-shaped, and he just became even more intelligent than he already was. So he is another integral part to the Intelligencia in the comics as well. So he would fit in absolutely perfectly here. And this is actually a team, now that I think about it, that I think would be perfect for a possible Ant-Man 4 if we do eventually get that, because there have supposedly been discussions about the fourth movie of that franchise. But then we have the Kingpin. So the Kingpin is a character that we know is going to have a bright future in the MCU. He just technically made his return. That's, again, considering and, you know, depending on if the Netflix series is canon. But either way, Vincent D'Onofrio came back as Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, in the Hawkeye Disney Plus series. It's great to see him back. He's going to be back in the Echo Disney Plus series as well. Also on top of that, Daredevil Born Again. So that is definitely going to be a lot of fun to see. And Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, is a character that I don't believe has ever been on the Intelligencia in the comics. But just given his status as a big bad villain, and he's more, I'd say he is less intelligent smarts and more street smart. So it could be a really useful aspect of this team, coming at it with the intelligence from a different perspective. But at the same time, I don't know if he would want to be on the team. I kind of just threw him in here just to talk about him, but I realistically don't think he would be on the Intelligencia in the MCU. I think he would probably think of himself as too good for that. You know, he's the kingpin of crime. He doesn't need a whole group to work with, and especially not all these eggheads and all that stuff. So he would probably think of himself as too good for that, and he would want to keep things more street level, whereas the Intelligencia is more about human experimentation, gamma radiation, Hulk blood, and all that stuff. So Kingpin probably would not be on the team. But you know who would? I think would be another character who hasn't been involved in the team of the comics, but I think would be a perfect opportunity and a perfect member in the MCU, is Iron Patriot. Now, there's a couple different ways they could go about doing this, because, of course, we did get a version of Iron Patriot in Iron Man 3, but that was Rhodey, so that was kind of like the heroic version of the character. But in the comics, Iron Patriot is actually the persona that Norman Osborn takes on after he's redeemed, after he is no longer Green Goblin. Norman Osborn is a hero now. He is president. He is Iron Patriot. And in the comics, this was the version that led the Dark Avengers. I believe he also had a version of the Thunderbolts at one point as well. So I think we could get a Norman Osborn in the MCU, and if we do, they probably wouldn't do the Green Goblin storyline, at least not right away, especially since we just had Willem Dafoe in No Way Home. It would probably be the Iron Patriot, Thunderbolts, Dark Avengers approach, which I do think will be pretty cool, but because of the whole Sony thing, I think Norman Osborn is less likely. So a different character that I think would be a grand opportunity to take on the role and the mantle of this evil Iron Patriot from the comics is Justin Hammer. Bring back Sam Rockwell from Iron Man 2. This is a character that just honestly I think was one of the best parts of that movie, and Sam Rockwell has said in the past he would love to come back. So many numerous fans want him to come back. He would be a perfect villain. It would be perfect for him to come back in Thunderbolts or Armor Wars or one of these projects like this, and especially for a thing like Iron Patriot, it just works so well because he just wanted to be Tony Stark. So now that Tony Stark is gone, he could be like, oh, I can fill that void. He either steals or makes his new own modified version of the Iron Patriot armor, and he becomes this supposedly heroic figure as Iron Patriot, but secretly behind the scenes is working for more villainous purposes. I think this could work greatly, and he could actually even be the one that relates to MODOK. He could be the one that kind of takes over for AIM since Aldrich Killian is gone. He could be the one to retrieve MODOK's suit and body from the quantum realm. There's just so many riches of potential when it comes to this character of Justin Hammer. I just really, really hope that he comes back in the MCU because he's such a cool character. Now, the interesting thing about the Intelligencia in the MCU is that makes me think that there is more than just this group we saw in She-Hulk, is because even all before that, before She-Hulk was ever even announced, all the way back in 2015 when we got Marvel Studios' Avengers Age of Ultron, we had the introduction of Andy Serkis as Ulysses Claw. And in his introduction scene, we got this little info card on him, which has all this bunch of information on Ulysses Claw. But one of the most notable aspects is if you look at affiliation, it does say former member of the Intelligencia. So that was our first indication of the Intelligencia being a group in the MCU. And while, yes, of course, Andy Serkis's Claw did die, was murdered by Killmonger in Black Panther, I fully believe that he could come back, because in the comics, that's literally how he became Claw. Ulysses Claw died, and then he was brought back to life. He was revived as a fully sound being as Claw, and that's when he got his crazy sound energy wave superpowers like he does in the comics. And this is something that I've been really hoping for since his death in that Black Panther movie, just because I loved his character so much, is to bring him back, maybe even have him be the big bad villain of Black Panther 3. That would be pretty awesome to see. Just bring him back in some sort of aspect. And I think, he would be another one that would be perfect for the Intelligencia because he was also a member in the comics. And it's just, the opportunity is right there, people. Andy Serkis, great actor. I'm pretty sure he would love to come back. So please, Marvel Studios, bring him back. Now, finally, we have to talk about Doctor Doom. So, Doctor Doom was a member, and I believe the leader of the team in the comics, at least in a couple different iterations of the Intelligencia. Doctor Doom was the leader. And Doctor Doom, of course, fits in very well. Victor Von Doom, he's a very intelligent guy, a very big, bad supervillain. And while we don't know when he is coming to the MCU, he inevitably is, whether that is in Fantastic Four or not until after Secret Wars. Doctor Doom he's coming in. He's going to have a big presence, and I feel like this could be a great opportunity for him to have such a big presence, is if he is the leader of a big team like this, such as the Intelligencia. Then again, you could do another big bad supervillain team like maybe the Cabal. He was also the leader of that in the comics, so that's another possibility. But then again, depending on what they want to do with Doom in the MCU, he might be a similar situation to Kingpin, where he may think of himself as too good for something like this. But if he is the leader, if he is the one that isn't fully in control, I could see Doctor Doom being on the Intelligencia in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the Intelligencia in the MCU? Do you think what we saw in She-Hulk was the last of it? Do you think it was just some crazy little Reddit group? Or do you think there's more to offer in the MCU from the Intelligencia, and what different characters, what different highly intelligent supervillains from Marvel Comics and from the MCU do you think could be a part of the Intelligencia? Whether they're dead or not, you know, again, people can always come back, especially we have the multiverse variants, all that stuff. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.